Morning folks. So back out again. Been up and down the country for 5-6 weeks, so I'm back to my own research areas now, just seeing what's changed, and I'll be chatting a little bit about skeptics today, as that's been a topic raised on a lot of the UK research as of late, rightly so in some cases, but I'm about to write a blog about that, but anyway, let's get inside here and we'll chat a little bit more about that later. So just getting inside, what I've noticed straight away is that obviously we're in the height of summer now. 3 weeks left of the British summer, if you can call it summer. And what you notice is what I'm noticing now is it's so much more dense than it normally is coming up to summer. There's the stream that runs through, and this goes all across the moors and meets up with the Irwell from here. And I've said on numerous times before about in my research areas there's nothing that screams Bigfoot. There are small glyphs that I've found, there are unusual small structures, but nothing that screams Bigfoot, and you wouldn't expect it to, in all honesty, in an area this size, because it's very small. Doesn't mean that they won't pass through and utilise its what's here. That would make sense to do that, but permanent stays, they're not going to happen here. As I've stated before, I believe that the sites of habitation are in more remote areas of Britain. I would say mainly Scotland and some possibly parts of down south. Is there any proof to that? No. Does the theory stand up? To some degree, and we can talk a little bit more about that in the blog perhaps at some point. For now, as I say, I mentioned the skeptics earlier, and we were having a discussion. I was having a discussion online with a few skeptics, and skeptics are a bit like skeptics are quite funny, and they also come in various guises and in various spectrums, probably much like Bigfoot researchers. You get ones that will stretch the truth, but generally what I find with most skeptics is that they will cherry pick. They'll cherry pick science that substantiates their claims, and then they'll cherry pick pieces of research, even down to statements that individual researchers make, and then that's it, that's gospel. You made a statement once, and that's your opinion, and anything else that you've said is now discredited because of that one statement. We've painted a broad picture. We now have a broad picture of your personality and your research techniques. We already know everywhere you've been, everyone you've spoke to, every book you've read, every paper you've read. As I say, it can get quite annoying. Cherry picking can get quite annoying at times, but it's part of, if you're going to be a researcher, it's part of the game, fortunately. And if you're going to put your head above the parapet, especially UK Bigfoot, then you have to expect that you will be abused, discredited, And you have to accept that. That's just the way it is. But there are also useful skeptics about. They raise some really valid points. But what's interesting is they make those points like none of us have thought about that. Like no one's thought about why there aren't enough Bigfoot tracks in Britain. Although there are valid reasons which I'll cover in the blog. So I was just looking around. That's a deer. It's a deer. Thought I heard something. Anyway, yeah, back to our friends, the skeptics. Yeah, I think we should start really acknowledging some of what they say. If you have the inclination to, if you're interested, if you're bothered. If you're not bothered and you want to just get on with what you're doing, cool. You do that. That's fine. We can certainly proceed on our merry way without even engaging with skeptics. But I believe there is some value to what they're saying. Some of them. But I won't engage with them for long if they're not going to acknowledge their own flaws. Most of which are lack of field research. And you can say what you want about having a viewpoint from the armchair, being able to reference science and historic data in regards to food sources in the UK, in regards to no Bigfoot mythology in the UK. So I had one guy recently who seems like a quite polite fellow. He wanted to get into the ins and outs of the Bigfoot research scene, which is cool. He raises some really good points, but he sort of raised those points like none of us had mentioned it, not like we weren't aware. Like we weren't aware that there isn't an abundance of Bigfoot tracks, for example, footprints. Like there isn't any history, a mythology, historically, of a Bigfoot type creature. All this has been acknowledged decades ago by the veterans of this, if you want to call it that, of this field. By people that have spent decades and actually seen one with their own eyes, doing the research and logging data. Are there flaws with that data? Yes, probably. What you'll also find them doing is going through the comments section, looking at your past videos, looking at your past blogs, and taking that as gospel. Taking a statement you said out of context, or even indeed context, and not forgiving any mistakes, not forgiving that this is a subject like most, where the research is going to evolve over time. His opinion is going to change. What was evidence 6 months ago is not evidence now. That kind of thing. I think we also have to start acknowledging that stick structures, tree structures, for me, that's a little bit of a bugbear of mine. Much of it, I believe, if not the majority of it, can be explained by nature. That's not to say it is nature. What I'm saying is that it can be reproduced by nature. Much, not all. For example, some would say that that's a teepee. They would shoot it from a certain angle and say, look, this is a teepee. Wow, look at that. That mirrors the ones in America. Now, you might say, how do I know that that's not a teepee? Well, I'd say that the trees have died, essentially. Looking at them, they look in poor shape. They're on the side of a hill, and they've simply fallen into that tree. Again, it can be explained by nature. Does that mean to say it was nature? Not necessarily, but we can assume strongly that it was nature. So let's see if I can find any more examples of that, because this is something that I want to talk about in the blog. Not that I'm any expert on stick structures or an expert on anything, but what I can try and do is give both sides of the coin, and also look at it objectively. You know, there's no real harm that can come from it if we're not discerning about what we're finding, and not, which most of us are. You know, there's no, you know, I'm not making a statement that any of us are making false statements. What I'm saying is often we're jumping to conclusions. That's all. And it's natural, as does everybody. We don't know anything about this creature. We don't know its motivations. We presume to know its motivations. We presume to know its diet. We presume to know its habitat. This is the whole thing. It's such a difficult area to research without referencing American and Canadian material. That's what we do constantly because it's all we've got. Or this one, for example. What can we determine about this out of context? What can we say about it? Well, we can say anything we like. Does it have similarities to things found in the US and Canada? Of course. Of course. Can it be explained away by nature? Of course. And we are all up against it in regards to discerning what is nature and what is Bigfoot. It's a very difficult thing to do. That being said, it's also difficult to explain away some of the structures found in the UK. I've mentioned it in a few comments before about the asterisk formations. I've never found one in my research areas. Never. But I know that there are lots and lots out there across the country that look identical. And there's a uniformity about the asterisk formations as well. It isn't just random branches falling in a pattern. It just isn't. And it doesn't matter how loud the skeptics cry that that was nature. In my opinion, in regards to stick structures, the asterisk is probably one of the more interesting ones, as far as I'm concerned anyway. To make things more confusing, look, these are a real pain in the backside. And if you notice here, I'm on the side of a hill. The camera really doesn't do it justice, but it's very steep. You have to take my word for that. And it runs down here, down, right down there, into, that's a clearing, that is not a path, and the path is beyond that, on the other side of the river. Obviously I'm walking through here looking for specific things, but who is walking through putting this in the ground? So you can see, snapped off. It's a good sized stick rammed into the floor. Why is anyone's guess. I just don't know. Could it be nature? In this location, it's a possibility. It's a slim one, but it's a possibility. Did it fall and stick into the side of the hill from this tree, which is a completely different species, this one here? Perhaps it fell from the ones further back. There's nothing to say that it didn't. Would it stick in the ground like that? In my opinion, no. There's just no way that it would do that. Did a kid come along, plant it in the ground? I think in this case, I don't know what happened, but I think in some cases kids do that. Kids do some weird things. Why? I don't know. We all did weird stuff with sticks and stones and when we were kids. Sometimes you're just daydreaming. Sometimes you'll find smaller branches that are twisted around. That's not always Bigfoot. Often these trees do signify Bigfoot activity. They lead off the trail and the small snaps lead onto more snaps and more small structures. You know, that is true. But often you'll come across a trail where a branch is snapped and it means nothing. It's just someone's walked by and they may have been stood having a conversation and grabbed it and snapped it. That's just the way it is. Anyway, come on, let's keep going. So, stick lean. So, here I am on the side of a bloody hill where nobody goes, allegedly. However, we're not far from the town, and clearly someone has been here. That looks to me like a wild camper, or just kids being out and about, and they've lent a sharpened stick against a tree. How annoying. But we acknowledge that it happens, and it happens a lot. Okay, in that case it was sharpened. I've never come across that before. So that makes it really easy to discern that that was not Bigfoot. And do I think Bigfoot has been here in this wood? Currently nothing suggests to me that it has. I can't rule it out. I don't frequent this place enough on a daily basis to make those assumptions. However, logically, realistically, I don't think so. What do I base that on? I base that on finding next to no evidence. One or two stick leans in the past, one or two strange branches stuck in the ground. They were unusual, actually. They were unusual. But I can't, again, you can't rule out these kids. You just can't rule out that children would do something like that. So, the quest goes on, folks. And for me, the quest is going to take me into more remote parts of Britain. I've obviously visited some, but I need to get further north. As I've said before, that's where I believe the real evidence will one day be found. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because what skeptics forget, or UK Bigfoot skeptics forget, is that this is a brand new movement. Bigfoot in the UK. Yes, you do have witnesses that have been researching quietly and privately for decades. But as a movement, as a body, it's brand new. We don't have the decades of research that the Americans have to fall back on. We don't have that anywhere near that kind of number. Anywhere near. You're talking, I wouldn't even like to estimate. But what I would say is we've probably got under 50 researchers here in the UK. As opposed to America, where they have tens of thousands. All corroborating data, collating data, sharing information, squabbling like we are. In fact, we're not squabbling amongst ourselves, let's be honest about it. Not yet anyway, but we're not squabbling amongst ourselves. It's the old turd in the punch bowl syndrome. It's the skeptics getting involved in an area of research that have little field knowledge of. We can all look at historical records for what they're worth. Who wrote them? How accurate were they? Are those questions asked? No. They're referenced as a point of fact. And we know historically that that's just not valid. Certainly not valid enough 100% of the time, anyway. However, it is documented. They are documented statistics and certain information that has been logged about, I don't know, food and farming in the UK, mythology in the UK, etc, etc. So we have to acknowledge that, we have to be realistic with it, as annoying as it is. So research area 1 yields nothing today. So we've come to area 2, which is a couple of miles walking to get where I need to be, just parked up. So let's see what lies ahead. I haven't really found much evidence here either. Enough to keep me coming back, enough to monitor, which you would, but nothing incredible. So let's see. Got to the location here. River runs right through the centre of this small river stream. I'm going to head up to higher ground here, and it's interesting when you look at in the places where you find no evidence, and this is a problem for both camps really. For a researcher, it's disheartening. For the skeptic, it's a problem, isn't it? Because if you have structures appearing in one forest that are allegedly caused by nature, same species of tree, same weather, same terrain, same wildlife, why is that? Why is it happening in one wood, not in another? Maybe someone can explain that. Maybe a dendrologist, a tree expert can explain that. Maybe you can't. Regardless, either way, it's a problem, isn't it? Come on. We don't have to get upset about it. That someone is attempting to disregard our findings. We need to embrace them. As difficult as that might be. I will try to embrace skeptics where possible, because it's the way forward.